In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at how to duplicate building models in Total War Attila. So in the last tutorial, we looked at how to replace textures on building models, and we used this building here in TED as an example, where we took the texture of the foundation and the chimney and we changed it to something that looks a bit more sudden. The issue with the method that we used in that tutorial is that by replacing the texture, we replace it for the default vanilla model and any other building models that also use that texture. If we want to have multiple versions of this building, or if we want to keep the original and default model, we need to make sure that we duplicate the building model first before applying our new texture to it. So in order to do that, we're going to be using RPFM to duplicate the building model and then assign new textures to it. And we can actually do this all within RPFM, as we'll explore shortly. Previously, we worked with RM Editor and we used it to identify what textures a particular building model was using. As it turns out, RPFM actually has the capability to now do this all within the one program. So to refresh, I'm going to open up our data folder for Total War Attila, where we originally got the building model from the models2 pack file. And from the last tutorial, we then extracted the relevant building model, and then we created our own tutorial movie pack file here. So I'm going to open that. Now we are in RPFM, and if I expand the folders here on the left hand side, we have the two texture sheets that we created. So we have the diffuse and the normal, and this is where we took this original texture here and we copy pasted it over the relevant textures that we wanted to replace. And then here, Western Townhouse 1 is all the associated building model files. Now, if we want to duplicate this building model to have a second variation using these new textures that we made, the first thing that we need to do is rename everything here. So starting with the building models, Western Townhouse 1, we're going to right click and hit rename. And very simply, we're going to change Western to Southern. And we're going to do the exact same for all the other pieces. So right click, rename. And we can see here that these are the folders. So the parent folder name has already been changed, and we just need to change the actual file name itself. I'm going to change that to Southern. I'm going to copy it so that when I right click and hit rename, I can just copy paste for every other one. I'm going to go down and do the exact same thing for every single one. And just as I did for the building model files, I'm going to do the same for the textures as well. So what we've essentially done is create a new building model and new textures, and while they are reading each other, the game and TED cannot. So we need to add some lines in DB. In order to do this, just like before we added the rigid models folder from a vanilla Attila pack file, we're going to do the same. So I'm going to right click on my overarching folder. I'm going to go to add from pack file, and I'm going to navigate to my Total War Attila data folder, and I'm going to come down to my data pack file here. So if I expand this, I can see the DB folder here. I'm going to expand that, and then first I'm going to search for battlefield buildings tables. And I can see it here. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to double click on battlefield buildings. That's now added. Finally then, I can do the same thing for the second folder we need, and that is models building tables, which is here. And it's models building that we need. So once more, double click. Okay, so I'm going to X out of the preview, and now I'm going to go into battlefield buildings. So here we can see a list of all the different DB attributes for every single one of the vanilla building models. we're only concerned with what was Western Townhouse 1. So I'm going to shift click all the way down until I find it and delete everything else. Right click and make sure you hit delete row. And now I'm going to double click in here to the key and once more start renaming everything. So Western Townhouse 1 is going to become Southern Townhouse 1. Again, the model name is going to be Southern instead of Western. And if I wanted to do any further editing, I can, but I won't. If I wanted to change the type of auto material, I can do that here. I can change the hit points of the building, the ignition threshold, and just make sure that visible in TED is selected. Just as we did for battlefield buildings, we're going to do the same for models building. But you see, if I click into this now, we get an error. So for whatever reason, if I go up to game selected, and instead of Attila, if I select Thrones of Britannia, come out of it and go back into it again, it suddenly works. Don't ask me why. But to move on, I'm going to do the exact same thing that we did last time. We're going to remove everything else except Western Townhouse 1. And if you were working with a custom model, you will essentially just be going right click and you'll be adding in a custom row and just filling in everything yourself. But for now, once more, change all the Western entries to Southern. And in the display path, this is what TED is going to be using for your folder where all your models are going to be showing up. For this reason, I'm going to change what is called Western to Southern. And that way in TED, there will now be a folder called Southern. And this building model and any future building models that I bring into the game will be in this same folder. Finally then, for CS2 path, we need to change the folder and the model file name. And that's done. We can close the preview, but before we save the pack file and finish, we need to first rename these two files. If we don't, they're essentially going to overwrite the vanilla DB, and this means that only our custom model is going to show up and nothing else. So I'm going to right click, hit rename, and instead of models building, I'm going to add custom to it. And once more, the same for here. Okay, now make sure before you save you go back to Attila as your game selected, and then we can go up to pack file, save pack file, and that's done. Later on we're also going to be seeing how this looks in game, so I'm going to go ahead and make a mod pack file as well that the game needs to read. So go to change pack file type, select mod instead, and now in my data folder also instead of movie I'm going to create tutorial mod. Okay, I now have TED opened, and provided everything was done correctly, I should be able to go up to create. In object type, select buildings, show building editor. And here I'm going to first check that in Western and Western Barbarian, that the original vanilla model is back to using its original textures, which yes, there it is. Perfect. And then I'm going to second check that there is a new Southern folder, which there is. And I'm going to go into that and select our new Southern Townhouse 1. And now we can see that there are all our new textures applied to it, and it is showing up in TED as a completely new model. So now I have the ability to use the exact same model, just with different textures for different locations. And this would save a modeler simply having to create an entirely new building. As far as duplicating goes, you can then do this as many times as you need. You simply just have to follow the steps that we went through, and the same applies for a custom model as we did with duplicating a vanilla model. And that's everything for this tutorial then. Next time we'll look a little bit into prefab creation and then also converting vanilla settlements. So until next time.